Hey guys, welcome back to another video. Today you can see we are in a little bit of a different environment, and that's because we're doing an off-road review of the 2023 Mazda CX-50 Meridian Edition. So yes, that's right. I am in the middle of Iowa, just north of Iowa City on the Hawkeye Wildlife Route, I believe it's called, or loop, something like that. But anyways, we're gonna go ahead and run this loop here with the 2023 Mazda CX-50. It's a very easy trail on the Onyx off-road app. Said it was like a 2 out of 10 and can be done pretty much by any vehicle most times of year. There are a few B roads, it said, that are obviously not going to be maintained or maintained very well. And because it's been so dry here in the Midwest, these roads should not be an issue even for a vehicle like this. But overall, it should give us a good test of the vehicle itself, how it handles gravel roads, off-road dirt roads, stuff like that. Maybe even test out the off-road drive mode, which does come standard with the CX-50, and just overall see how the all-wheel drive system does. It is a beautiful day out in the upper 70s. The sun is shining. You can see there is some nice flowers and vegetation behind us, as there is a little reservoir back here, which I'm sure is a little bit lower than normal given the drought that we are in. So overall, we're gonna go ahead and just check out this trail, give you my thoughts and off-road opinions on the CX-50 Meridian Edition. So immediately, some of my impressions of this vehicle is that it feels at home on these roads. I mean, like immediately as soon as I hit the gravel, as soon as I took it off paved roads, I'm like, yes, this is exactly where it feels like the CX-50 should be, especially here in the Meridian Edition with the off-road tires. Now all around, it is a very compliant ride. You know, I get we're not going over super rough pavement in that regard, but the suspension's handling it very well. Obviously the tires being all-terrain are helping quite a bit in terms of traction and just overall stability. And again, we're not doing anything crazy as of yet, and I don't expect to do anything very crazy on this route given it's such an easy rating and we've been in drought. So it means there's not going to be much mud. There really shouldn't be any moisture whatsoever on this road. This is exactly where this vehicle is designed to be on a back road, you know, to go hiking, going biking, going, you know, camping, going boating, anything like that. I think that is a perfect aspect of this vehicle and can pretty much take you there with ease because I know the trails that they had up at the Mama Rally for this vehicle that they went on were much more difficult, had, you know, big ruts, had, you know, uneven sections where, you know, you'd go on 3 wheels and stuff like that. And one of the other aspects that might be interesting is this one is finished in Zircon Sand Metallic, which as we know is a sand/tan color. And with it being so dry, I can already see the dust accumulating on the back window. This paint color should actually hide the dust quite well, as it's, you know, kind of a dusty color to begin with. But I think this is a great exterior paint color for a vehicle like this if you do plan to take it off-road, given it should hide some of the dirt pretty well. Now clicking the drive mode down into off-road mode here just to kind of play around with it and kind of see what it does. It appears to downshift 1 gear immediately, much like that of sport mode actually. So that is interesting. It definitely puts the transmission in a lower gear than it would normally be at. And in addition to downshifting a gear from what you'd normally be at, I'm sure the off-road modes in the CX-50 also optimize the traction and stability control systems because when you're off-road, you typically do want an additional amount of wheel slip over that of, you know, traditional paved surfaces, so you don't get stuck and continue on the momentum that you have. So the off-road mode probably does that here in the CX-50, and it'll be interesting to see if we come across any section where we can actually test that out and see if we can get some additional wheel slip versus that of the normal drive mode. So, as you can see, Zircon Sand Metallic doing a pretty darn good job hiding all the dirt and the dust that's accumulated from the gravel and dirt roads that we've driven on. Doing amazing. I will say, this graphic, I didn't really think it was very useful, just more of a styling and aesthetic thing. But I have to say, it actually, depending on the sun angle, where you're driving, it will keep the reflection from the sun from blinding you. And I know that is something that some other manufacturers have done. So I would say that is a useful touch in certain situations, again, depending on the sun angle that you're at. So yeah, it's definitely a very nice experience coming out to the middle of the country and just, you know, getting away from all the city, all the movement, all the people, enjoying some alone time, gathering your mental thoughts, and great vehicle to do it in, that's for sure. So let's continue on. I believe we will get a little bit closer to some water or the river over here in a few miles up the trail. And hopefully we get to see some water, some nice flowers, some animals, stuff like that. Have seen a few wildlife so far, chickens, deer, nothing out of the ordinary, I will say, but definitely nice to see, and it might depend on the time of year that you come. Okay, so now that we have our off-road impressions out of the way, let's go ahead and take a look at how the CX-50 drives on-road. Now, overall, I have to say my time with this vehicle has been pretty positive. Again, if you guys haven't seen any of my last videos, I would highly recommend checking those out. But this is one of the newer, or the first newer Mazda products I've really had hands-on time with in, you know, many, many years, outside of driving the Miata on Road America when I was up there in Wisconsin earlier this year. But anyways, once again, this is the Meridian, so it does have all of the off-road bits that the CX-50 has to offer, including the all-terrain tires, which is the main difference from that of the on-road variants of this vehicle. But with that being said, even with the all-terrain tires, the vehicle does drive fairly well on-road, has very good on-road manners, but I will say you do hear some growl or some rumbling from those tires on normal regular pavement as we have on front of us. Now overall, the engine stop-start system hasn't been used all that much with my time with this vehicle. Now that might have somewhat to do with the fact that the HVAC is running, but I do know other vehicles I've had just last week, for example, the Santa Fe, did stop the engine quite a lot at most stop signs and most stop lights, even with the HVAC running. So that just might be a difference in programming and tuning by Mazda. Overall, I would rather it not stop the engine when the HVAC is running at a fairly higher fan speed, just to keep the interior cabin cool. Now going around these off ramps or these clover leaves here on the interstate, this is kind of where I believe the all-terrain tires hinder the CX-50's performance just a little bit versus some of the other vehicles in this segment, or even the other on-road variants of the vehicle, you know, with the all-season tires. But overall, it's not terrible handling. It's very balanced as a vehicle. The power output is very good from the 2.5 liter turbo, not even full throttle. You can see we are now exceeding the speed limit just a little bit. So very impressed with the 2.5 liters torque. I think it is extremely good. I'm not exactly sure what octane gas was put in this vehicle upon delivery, but as of right now, it is running 87, and I really don't think there is a major advantage to going with the premium octane that gives you just a little bit more horsepower and a little bit more torque out of this vehicle, unless you really think you are going to be stressing and pushing this vehicle to its limits. But anyways, going back to the overall driving dynamics, on-road performance here behind the wheel, I have to say it is very balanced. I do like the overall nimbleness of this vehicle, even with the all-terrain tires. I think it would be very interesting to drive a CX-50 with the normal, 18 or 19-inch wheel options that do come from the factory. I think it would be even more performance and sporty handling in terms of the overall driving dynamics. But even with the all-terrain tires, it's not bad. You do get just a little bit of that rumble or growl from the tires, especially when you have the radio muted and the HVAC is on a lower fan setting. But even with that said, handling is still pretty good. You do get a little bit of body roll depending on what you're doing with the vehicle. Obviously, this is not a performance driving machine, but Mazdas tend to be known for being a little bit more on the sportier side compared to some of the other competitors in the segment. So I really do think, even with the all-terrain tires and the larger sidewalls, that this is a great all-around vehicle for driving. Day-to-day roadways, you can see there is some construction going on here in this construction zone, and much like some of the other roads across the country, roads in this area are particularly in fairly poor shape for the most part. So I think in some regards, even if you aren't going to do all-terrain type of driving with this vehicle, that it would be advantageous just to get the larger sidewalls and the all-terrain tires to go over potholes or anything wherever you live. And I'm sure the winter performance with these tires being 3-peak rated as well would be pretty good. Now, when it comes to the overall space and feel behind the wheel here inside the cabin, well, I think this is a fairly spacious interior for the most part. I do like the center console design that is set down a little bit lower than most of the other compact SUVs, at least newer ones that are on the market. Typically, you're finding SUVs more and more that are having higher center consoles that have all of your physical controls here, just a little bit closer to the driver and everything like that. But I really do like how the CX-50 keeps those controls a little bit lower. It gives your ability or your leg the ability to go over the center console just a little bit to gain additional leg room and overall width inside of the driver's seat here. And I really haven't had any issues with the available amount of leg room down here. I have plenty. My leg does occasionally rest here on the driver's side door right around the handle, but it is padded on this lower section. So that really hasn't been a comfort issue, and I really haven't noticed them making contact on either the door or the center console all that much. So interior space here in the front seat is very good. All of the controls and most of the materials are very good as well. This is not padded on the center console, which could probably use some additional padding in my opinion, given the fact that your leg may have the frequency to rest up here from time to time. But outside of that, all the materials here on the center armrest, the seating surfaces, most of the door panel is going to be soft touch and fairly premium for this class and type of vehicle. So that has been a very positive aspect. The steering wheel is a little bit on the thinner side for my liking, which I did mention in my likes and dislikes video. So I would say that's a slight negative. The controls feel a little bit on the cheaper side as well, but most of the other buttons here in the cabin, like I said, are pretty class competitive and haven't had any issues all around. I do like the driver instrument cluster here, the partially digital, partially analog design. Now, the screen and infotainment system being a little bit farther away from the driver is something that you don't see too often from new vehicles these days, especially ones that have physical buttons and knobs here on the center console to control that infotainment system. And here we have Android Auto pulled up on the screen, and scrolling and using the wheel here to go through all of the menus is a little bit on the cumbersome side of things. Android Auto and Apple CarPlay, I would say, are designed primarily to be used with touchscreen systems, which this is a touchscreen. You can use only with Android Auto and Apple CarPlay, and you cannot use the touchscreen functionality with the Mazda UI. So unique in that regard, not a huge deal. I do kind of dislike the way it is implemented with Android Auto and Apple CarPlay, but some of these controls down here and the shortcut buttons do work very well. As you can see, I pulled up media and it immediately maximizes the Pandora streaming service that I have currently activated. If you want to go back to maps, simple as that, one touch function. So I think overall the way they've optimized it is fairly good. Now, in terms of the overall cabin noise here at 70 miles an hour, I would say it's not terrible. You do hear the all-terrain tires. You do hear a little bit of additional, road noise and wind noise depending on the wind direction. And the overall insulation isn't that of a typical luxury car. I would say the tires are going to be the biggest noisemaker or additional noisemaker over that of, say, the regular CX-50 with the all-season. Now, if you are planning on using this vehicle day-to-day frequently at 70 miles an hour, I may consider choosing a different trim level in the lineup. Say the normal turbo if you want the same equipment as this vehicle, or one of the higher turbo trims just to get some more equipment, and again, the probably slightly quieter tires on most roadways. And since we are out here on the roadway, let's go ahead and quickly discuss the driver assistance and safety technology inside of this vehicle. I have to say, it works, but like I mentioned in my likes and dislikes video, not the best. Lane keeping is definitely just that. It keeps you within the lanes, so you have to kind of start to go over a lane for the system to correct you. It does not center you in the lane whatsoever, so I'll go ahead and demonstrate it here around this turn. And as you can see, we were, at least one full wheel and tire over the line before the system did start to correct. And actually, we might have hit the rumble strips before that. It works. Not the best system out there. The adaptive cruise control is the same way for the most part. It works. Not the best system I've used out there. I do like the fact that it is a radar cruise control, so there is a radar at the front bumper, which judges the distance and proximity to the vehicle or object in front of you. So that's nice instead of being a camera-only based system. So I would say for the most part, the systems, they do work. They do what they're advertised. The blind spot detection and the cross traffic has probably been the best performance out of all the safety and driver assistance technologies. But they're a little bit on the basic side, the functionality, and overall I would say they're definitely not the best systems I've used out there. Now, one interesting aspect that Mazda did tweak for 2024 was the damper tuning and damper design. Now, I'm not exactly sure what they did, if they just revised the tuning of the shock or if it's, a different technology being used within the shock. But that was something that they did change, and one of the few things that they did change for 2024. And I would be curious to put a 23 like this vehicle back to back with a 2024 just to see how the overall ride comfort and handling is, and if you can notice a difference in day-to-day usage. Overall, I think the ride quality is good with these tires. Inflated to about 35 PSI cold. I would say it is a little bit on the harsher or rougher side of things, but again, that is likely due to the tire choice itself. If you were to go with a normal all-season, I'm sure the ride would improve quite a lot over an all-terrain like this one, but I'm sure Mazda worked with the Falcon tire manufacturer to tune this tire exactly for the needs of this vehicle. So it's good in all conditions rather than just being a mostly off-road performance tire, because at the end of the day, most people are driving these vehicles on-road more often than not versus off-road. So I'm sure the tire performance is good all around, but I would say it's a little bit harsh over certain bumps.
So the last point I want to touch on is MPG. During my time with this vehicle, it was a little tricky to tell exactly what my overall MPG was, but I was averaging somewhere just over 20 MPG in mostly city types of driving, with somewhere in the mid-20s out on the highway doing 70, 75 miles an hour. Now, the EPA rates this vehicle at 23 city, 29 highway, and 25 combined. And I would have to say, based on what I saw from the computer of this vehicle, I would say I did not meet that rating. Now, I wasn't too far off, but I would say I was somewhere around 2 to 3 MPG off, according to this vehicle's computer and the style of driving that I was doing. Now, is this vehicle still class competitive considering the power output from the 2.5 liter turbo? I would say yes, but when it comes to the ability to watch the fuel gauge decrease over time, with just your normal routine daily driving, I would say that was just a little bit saddening, and that's exactly what happened with the CX-50. But that's pretty much going to do it for my driving impressions on the CX-50 Meridian Edition. To summarize, great power from the turbo engine, not so great MPG from my actual driving experience, great styling, good interior space and materials, suspension tuning is good, but interested to see what they did change for 2024 with the dampers. Tires are a little bit noisy in terms of the all-terrains, but should offer good on- and off-road capability, including the 3-peak rating in the wintertime. The infotainment design is not so great, but okay and usable to say the least. And my overall impression in terms of value is that it's okay, but maybe not necessarily class leading. But given this vehicle does start out at $41,000 for 2023 and around $42,000 for 2024, given the compact class of SUV, I think Mazda is targeting the semi-luxury space, where it's not necessarily a full-on luxury compact SUV, but it certainly is maybe a more premium offering than that of some of the other mainstream brands out there, which I typically think is part of the pricing of this vehicle, which is a semi-luxury price. Certainly not the most bang for the buck or the most value-oriented in the segment, but I don't think it's maybe the worst value out there either, although I would probably opt for a different trim level of the CX-50 if I were to purchase one myself. So personally, like I said, I see a little bit more value in some of the other trims of the CX-50, but overall it will come down to personal preference. But the vehicle itself, as tested, still does offer a lot of good features and creature comforts.
So you can see behind me additional wildlife and just how bad these drought conditions are here in the Midwest. And even though I'm not in a van down by the river, I am in the Mazda CX-50. So I think that's where I'm gonna leave this on and off-road driving impressions review video. Hopefully you guys enjoyed it as always. I know this was not a difficult off-road section. Rated 2 out of 10 on the app. I wasn't expecting much given not only that we're in drought, but also that there's just a lot of gravel roads out here. And that's mostly what it turned out to be. But it definitely gave me an idea of what the CX-50 Meridian Edition can do, and it feels right at home on these roads. You can see it's all dusted up. A lot of this plastic cladding I didn't realize would be beneficial in terms of driving on these roads, as you aren't chipping up your paint. So the additional cladding on the lower section of the doors there, along with every CX-50 having the black plastic, should prevent a lot of rock chip damage that would have happened without that cladding or with paint match trim. So once again, hopefully you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, make sure to hit that like button below. It greatly helps out the channel in these videos. Subscribe if you guys are not already subscribed, and make sure to stay tuned for additional content coming from other manufacturers. And make sure to check out my other videos here with the CX-50 Meridian Edition. Overall, very positive experience. Just a few negatives that I did discuss in my likes and dislikes video and in this video here in part of the review. So I want to give a huge thanks to Nick over at Mazda once again for sending out the CX-50 for me to test and review for you guys. Let me know what you guys think of the CX-50. Do you think it is a worthy on and off-road machine like this Meridian Edition, or would you go with a different trim level, more of the road-oriented ones? I definitely do like the turbo engine. Very stout, goes right at home here in this off-road trim. But let me know your thoughts down in the comment section below. Are you considering the CX-50, the Meridian Edition in specific, or a different trim level, or are you cross-shopping this vehicle with a different compact SUV in the segment? Definitely curious to hear your thoughts. A lot of pros and cons, like I mentioned, but it comes down to personal preference at the end of the day. So let me know all that down in the comment section below. Once again, I appreciate the support and you guys watching, and as always, hope to see you guys in the next one.